Tonight on HOKC Side Stories, join us for a little-known tale of one of the most brutal massacres in Texas history, as told in J.W. Wilbargers' Indian Depredations in Texas. The Maden family came to Texas in the year 1832 and settled in Houston County. In order to secure themselves against the attack of Indians, Maden and 2 or 3 of his neighbors, as was frequently the custom in those days, jointly built some strong log cabins close together in which they might take refuge in case of necessity. In the fall of 1833, in the light of the full moon, the time usually chosen by the Indians for making raids into the settlements, the families of Mr. Maden and others had collected at these log cabin buildings for a common defense. The house in which they were gathered was a double log cabin, consisting of 2 rooms with an entry between them. The men, 3 or 4 in number, were gathered in one room, and the women and children gathered in the other. The men were engaged in molding bullets and making preparations for their defense, but all of their firearms were gathered in the room occupied by the women and children. A while after dark, they were suddenly startled by the shrill yells of a large party of Indians. The Indians had crept up cautiously and had found out that the inmates of the house were divided in the manner above mentioned. Some of the Indians rushed into the room in which the women and children were, while others stood guard at the door of the room occupied by the men. The former, with tomahawks and butcher knives in hand, easily effected an entrance, while one of their number guarded the door by placing one hand on each side of the door frame above and 1 foot on each side below, thus preventing the inmates inside from escaping whilst the work of death was being carried out. The Indians who entered the room immediately attacked Mrs. Maden, wounding her severely in the face and other parts of her body. Finally, from the effects of repeated wounds, she fell, and in falling, she happened to roll under the bed nearby. One of her little sons, seeing her lying under the bed, crawled to her for protection. One of the Indians struck another lady a terrible blow on the head with his tomahawk, fracturing the skull and knocking her into the fireplace. The blood flowed so profusely from the wound as to extinguish the flames, and the Indians were compelled to carry on their work of destruction in the dark. At this juncture, Mrs. Maden, who had previously noticed the position of the Indian guarding the door, strange as it may seem, actually crawled out of the room between his feet, followed by her little son, without being seen by the warrior, as his attention was drawn to what was going on in front of him. As it was then dark, she crept to a cabin some distance from the house, unobserved by the Indians outside, where she hid herself under some old clothes. 7 women and children were slain in this dreadful affair. When the Indians had finished their diabolical work, they set fire to the house, which was consumed with the bodies of their victims. Strange to relate, the men in the other room remained there some time, listening to the dying groans of their wives and children, and, because they were unarmed, they did not attempt to go to their relief. They watched for an opportunity and fled, leaving the poor women and children to their sad fate. The only instance probably of such shameful cowardice recorded in the bloody annals of Texas history. It does seem strange that these men, although unarmed, could have resisted the dying appeals of their wives and children. They might have rushed forward together with sticks or clubs, with pocket knives, with anything, and made an effort to rescue their helpless families. It would have been far better, and much more honorable, than to have acted as they did. Mr. Maden, when he left the house, was discovered and pursued by 2 Indians. He had with him the same little boy who had crept out of the room with his mother between the Indians' feet at the door. The child had escaped and ran back to his father. This somewhat impeded his movements, but as he passed through the cornfield, he pulled up a stalk of corn and presented it at the Indians who pursued him. In the dark, they supposed it to be a gun, and they stopped. Taking advantage of this, he and his little son hurried on and finally entered a dense cane brake, where they concealed themselves. For her part, Mrs. Maden came very near bleeding to death, but after a protracted illness, she eventually recovered from the wounds she had received. It appears that the Indians were so close to the house before they attacked it that they had learned the minutest particulars in regard to the situation of the inmates. This is evident from the fact that one of the men who had been in the room occupied by the women and children remarked as he started to leave that he, quote, must have more bullets. He had been but a little while in the men's room when the attack was made, and one of the Indians exclaimed in broken English, "More bullets, huh?" plainly showing him that he had been near enough to overhear the remark. The Indians took all of the firearms in the house, and when they had gone perhaps a quarter of a mile, they threw their own guns away and retained those that they had found at the station. They then made their way back to their mountain retreats without being pursued. And that will conclude this episode of HOKC Side Stories. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for all of the support. Be sure to stay tuned. We have lots of episodes coming your way. Live streams, shorts, more side stories, all sorts of exciting stuff, and I can't wait for you to see it. So stay tuned to HOKC, and we will see you next time on History at the OK Corral, home of history's greatest shootouts and showdowns.